Starting now. Okay, so if this is an experiment, as we already said, and if the it doesn't work out, then no one will have heard it. But if you're hearing our voices right now, it did work out. So
what is the criteria, you think, for working out? Sound, I guess that helps.
I think it's completely sound. I always say that. I say like, if it's the bad podcast, I'll delete it, but I haven't yet. I don't.
Yeah, interesting. So something always is interesting, even in it maybe not your intention.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I've talked with you about this before, that I really try to let the podcast be its own entity. Like it has an idea, you know what I mean? It has its own idea. I don't know what it is. I'm trying to have my ego wrapped up in it as little as possible. Very similar to our buddy Paul. My job is just do the bare minimum to show up and hit record. And then from there on, it's kind of out of my jurisdiction, and dream talk, whatever that is, dream talking, the podcast is taking over. That's it. That's my hippie sort of.
I mean, isn't that the nature of communication? Anyway, there's this third party, and it's the alchemy.
Exactly. Well, I've gotten into it before, and I'm not gonna. I repeat myself, but what I love about podcasts are that the third thing, the X factor, right? There's what I bring to the table. There's what Sharon brings to the table, and then this third, cooler, magical thing emerges. That is, the
rogue,
right? Exactly. It's got a mind of its own, and the metaphor I overuse it of playing jazz, right? Getting together and improvising, that you build off of each other, and you find things you couldn't find without that collaboration.
I think there's a sort of parallel. It reminds me, I acted in my younger years, and there was like all these intentions before you got on stage, and you had all, you had to have your sort of tools, probably something like making sure your mic is working here, and, you have somewhat of a theme. I had to learn my lines and stuff, but then there's, this throwing it all away once you get on stage, and just trying to be in the truth of that moment, letting that, getting out of the way of it. Totally. And I love that.
Yeah, you could say giving it up to God if you're particularly religious, or just giving it up to the unknown, and having a sort of trust or faith in that it will, when it's time, it will arrive. I was thinking, when you're talking about acting, I was thinking of improv as kind of that on steroids.
Right?
That's why I love improv so much. Especially good improv.
We always love the same thing.
I know,
it's
right?
So great. It's like affirming you're a great person, and you like the thing. I must be great.
No, I know, it's funny. So in that spirit, you're the only person I think I've ever mentioned Pete Holmes to, who's my hero, that you actually knew who he was. A few other people.
Are you kidding? I thought he was like a household name.
I thought he was
awesome.
Too. I thought he should be to me, because he's my whole world. But a few people have said, "Oh, I've seen his show on HBO," which that was a pretty big thing. But to have listened to his podcast,
epic.
It was epic. It's great. His show on HBO is amazing to me, but the podcast is just such another different thing.
Yeah,
it's up there with watching Paul. It's like it's transcendent. It's amazing. It gets me, again, that reaffirming of, it gets me in touch with and validates parts of myself I never even considered looking at. It's a very.
You definitely have. I have a love affair with him somewhat. Nothing in the way of his wife. I don't think I'm going to split up his family, but I do have a love affair. But you could split up.
Oh yeah, no, I could.
Your love affair is like with Pete Holmes, and I just love that. I love listening to you talk about him, and it's so amazing how things transpired between you that inform, like, what were the odds of you guys meeting and having this connection?
No, it's really cool and crazy, and he's just one of those, like, and we live in a time now, getting back to YouTube and podcasts, like we were talking right before off mic, we live in a time where you can have a mentor virtually, you know, and I guess you used to be able to through books probably, you know. And
well, I remember being so excited that I could get tapes from like Ganga G and and even before that, like there's always a way, you know. It's a really, it kind of keeps, I think for about 4 years I did a couple of correspondence courses. One was with Siddha Yoga and another one was it's sort of like along those lines. Right. And it was just this weekly message and, you know, correspondence of hearing truth to me. And it, and now it's just like amping up to all these different levels, keeping up with technology, and the message still comes through and is alive no matter what the form, it seems.
I know,
you know?
which it's just such a blessing to live in this time. It's almost like there's so many options. It's
right.
Yeah, you know, like
the hologram is next.
yeah, exactly.
The virtual tour.
yeah, exactly. And you're gonna be in it and all that. But I talk about like my little piece of that. You know, I'm 30 years old, so this is early 2000s in Berkeley. When
I am twice as old as you.
Oh, no
did
way.
I just say that? I am.
You are not that old.
Seriously, yeah.
No
oh
way.
No, will you be my friend?
Oh, sure. No, come on. I'm friends with 90-year-olds. Yeah, I've always, since I was a little kid.
That's 3 times as old as you.
Yeah, I know.
That's really interesting.
Yeah. My buddy who's 90, I said when I saw him after the New Year, I go, hey, this is your second time in the 20s. How does it feel? Because he was 29.
But you know, that's so exciting because what's alive is so ageless.
It is. I was just thinking the same thing. Yep, yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
it speaks to you wherever you're at.
I feel that here, and I feel that in the alchemy of meeting you.
Right on.
It's very exciting.
I hope your husband doesn't get jealous, but you do look really awesome for that age.
Thank you.
I really mean.
I have to say, like most of my life, I've always felt I look older, and somehow I think the more, and the same thing with Paul and so many other people. And I don't know, you know, this is definitely disintegrating, but I do have to say, the more that falls away, the lighter and younger, more in touch with what we were just talking about is experienced.
Yes,
and there is a childlike quality to the spontaneity of that. It lightens up.
Yeah, I think of it as like you're carrying so much stuff in the mental state that it's noticeable. I mean, how much of it is you know, my perspective or whatever, how much of it is reality, but I see it in myself. I look younger now than I looked 5 years ago. When I look in my eyes, I look in my face, you know what I mean? And I see it in so many other people too.
True.
Yeah, and the childlike quality that comes back, it really, you know, it's almost a cliche or whatever, but I when, you know, during this quarantine, going to the park with my girls and just hearing the birds sing and looking at the sun come through the leaves, it's like, oh shit, like this is heaven on earth, you know? Even sober, just walking around, like, and that is what Paul's message, if I had to put it to any one thing, but it's all sorts of things. It's the time we live in. It's the information is so right there. Another huge one for me is, and we got to talk about your friend, because I do the Sam Harris app meditation every morning.
Oh yeah, Yariv. He's a really fun person over the years, and I know you have a few people on the podcast that you have a similar relationship, that this is a subject we almost have shorthand for, because we've been on a similar sort of path of teachers and
and it's cool. Exactly. Going through the same turmoil. And how priceless is having those friends and those allies to be like, you know, I was talking with Keith about this yesterday. Keith and I had a 2.5 hour conversation over the phone.
He's a really great person for clarity.
Insanely.
I really appreciate him.
And him and I, again, I think he's maybe twice my age, maybe not quite. I'm not sure. But him and I'm
not sure. He's got really good skin.
He does. Yeah, exactly. He could very easily be 50s, early 50s. I don't know.
I don't know age either. I'm just I don't even understand it.
yeah. But anyway, getting to that, like, you know, he does the Sam Harris meditation app too. And I'll say, hey, wasn't it so cool when he did this? And I noticed this very strange, subtle internal thing come up. And he goes, I sense the same thing. And and you just go like, oh my God. And it brings me back to Paul's thing of being at an AA meeting going, how did all these people get my thoughts? Right. Or thoughts. Yeah.
And especially if you're plugged into a similar theme,
yes.
The correlation. Yeah, we have such a shorthand. Sometimes it's like, oh my God, before he changes the subject, I know what he's about to change it to.
Yeah. It's so cool to have those.
And it's like this processing plant, the mind.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I know. You see the manufacturing of the little, how it goes from ethereal and ungraspable, and you watch it, when I'm high, I watch that process go even.
Because it's like one person removed. It's great.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. I've had a similar thought in the same of like, there's my another one of my favorite podcasters. So I only listen to about 1 out of 10 now, but there was a time when I listened to all of them. Was Joe Rogan. I'm sure you've heard of him.
Yeah, I know you're a Joe Rogan. Some of my favorite people are Joe Rogan fans. And I listen to him because he's the guy in your basement. I don't know.
No, that's a great way of putting it.
A real conversation with, and he's smart and he's fun. He's got like that youthfulness, it's something.
And he has so much passion and interest in so many different things. So one of his things is he talks about when he smokes weed, that like weed has its own ideas. Like, and then he'll grab them and he'll turn them into a bit for his comedy or whatever. But he's like, that's not my idea. Like Joe Rogan never could have thought of that. Like, it's a separate entity that could have.
That's so true. Yeah. There's probably so many conversations just about that, like how there are these different psychedelics that have personalities of their own.
Absolutely. Oh yeah. Hardcore.
It could take you off on another tangent of just pondering all that.
I don't know if your history, if you've done any psilocybin. That's my kind of biggest teacher.
I spent a whole summer.
Whoa.
No, I don't mean to. I'm editing myself.
Don't do it. Go for it.
Summer, with a group of friends. We had a shared house, which is really common in New York City when I lived there.
This
and you go up to the country.
Is it Brooklyn? Or
I lived in
upstate?
Manhattan at the time.
Oh, Manhattan. Okay. Right on.
And we had this shared house, and it was great. And people sort of did their thing and came together for dinner, and we were having a great summer. And it wasn't until the end of the summer. I found out like one of my best friends and, everybody was doing mushrooms. I'm like, you didn't tell me.
They were doing it in hiding.
How can you tell me? And they're like, well, you're kind of like on mushrooms all the time.
That's funny. I like that.
And I was like, I think that's like a composite. Like it's a compliment and it's an insult. You didn't tell me.
Yeah.
But it was actually one of the best. So then I'm like, well, give me one. I want a mushroom,
Have you done, okay, hold on. Have you done it before that point? Have you?
Never. I didn't do it.
Okay, I'm loving this story.
So I'm like, I'm in the bag taking it and nothing happened.
Are you serious?
Nothing happened. So I don't know. It could have been, I don't think, but I have had an experience where something did happen when I was like, do you really want to hear this?
Oh, are you kidding me? I'm so, I think everybody wants to hear this. So,
okay. So I'm a lot older than you, right? So
this
was like a really cool time to actually, I guess maybe it is now too, but I guess LSD was really like, really great if you kind of clued into it in the right way. But I didn't know about that. I was just kind of this free, I think I was either 12 or 13. I was 12, probably turning 13. And my sister had this friend that she kind of kept at arm's distances because she was a little too wild. And she came looking for my sister and to go to the park. And I'm like, well, she's not here. And she's like, okay, well, you want to come to the park with us? And she gave me LSD. I didn't even know what LSD was. Now, this sounds like a horror story, which is really interesting how we've been conditioned.
You were 12, 13 years old.
It was probably summer. I was turning 13. So I was in the park. I know. It's like, so we were.
My jaw's on the floor.
Yeah. And I'll tell you something. It was one of the best experiences of my life. It opened, I think it might have been something that helps me even now, because it just proved to me there were other realms. Like, this realm is just as real as those realms. And it really opened up something spiritually. And I just spent the whole time laying on a park bench looking at the sky, just like, oh wow, oh wow, oh wow. And so do not give your 13 or 12-year-old.
I was just going to say, hey, disclaimer, please. Disclaimer. Public announcement.
And honestly, I think I even tried it after, and it was terrible because I had knowledge of it.
Mm-hmm. You had your own ideas of what it was.
I had my own ideas, and I had heard people have bad trips as opposed to good trips. So I didn't do it after. I didn't want to touch it really after I did it maybe a second time. But that first time sort of like cracked me open in a very beautiful way. I got lucky. So that was but I don't think, but then, my process was more organic. It wasn't that drug fueled, although I loved weed and, stuff like that. But, it's just Paul, going back to Paul, I remember him telling me how, he was really exhausted at some point in his post-awakening. Maybe he was doing satsangs or something all the time, and he went to a healer, and she said, okay, I want you to have like 10 cups of coffee a day, like maybe 30 cups of coffee.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, wait a minute, your adrenals are already shot. And he said something that is so true. It's like, let me think if I can. What we believe is often, don't have these set ideas, because I was like, that is the unhealthiest thing, and those are just kind of two. And it was great. He said it took him about a year of drinking coffee, this weak man that you would think it would be awful for his kidneys,
the overload for him.
But things don't always make sense. That's I think it, maybe in a nutshell.
Yeah, well, exactly. I always like to think of it kind of like it doesn't make sense to you, but it's making sense to something else. Something else has a better, you can call it higher power, or you can call it whatever, has a better sense of what's right for you at this time and place. And it doesn't always have to make, that's faith, right? That's having.
That's definitely faith.
Yeah. I'm totally, okay. Wow. What a way to start the podcast. That's a hell of a story.
I know.
Holy
they
shit.
don't make sense. They don't
Yeah. So, okay. I was thinking that, when I was going back to what I'm starting to learn. And so I like to do the meta thing of during the podcast, talk about how I'm thinking about the podcast and where I'm trying to go with it, instead of it being like a
meta. Love it.
You know what I mean? Instead of it being like my own little secret, and you can tell I'm contrivingly trying to figure out how to do this right.
You are so transparent.
I'm trying to be. Yeah,
don't even think you're
trying to be as trans. That's what I'm saying. I know I am, but I'm showing my cards. So one thing I've noticed is if I, especially when I'm meeting someone for the first time, like my buddy Patrick, my new friend Patrick, who we had an insane podcast.
I haven't heard that one yet.
You would love it. It was,
really?
I mean, now this is my little, opinion, but I think it was the best one I've done. It was,
I love it.
It was the closest to the Pete Holmes. You made it weird, because we got to know each other over the podcast. Right. And
nice. And no baggage. Right. Exactly. And so what I'm learning, I could dive into how cool that was. Just go back and listen to it, guys. It was number 11. But what was so cool about that, what I've been learning more and more, is even if I think I know somebody, this is kind of an opportunity to tell me your story, because it is interesting, actually. And kind of my go-to prompt is, when did you first get the hint that there was something else going on? That sort of it was before that.
Even before that. Okay, I was going to say, I thought that was maybe the first hint. But that's cool.
It was definitely like on steroids at that point.
Yeah. That was the first big super hint. But maybe you even had a little inclination before that.
Yeah, I think, my kind of belief is that a lot of us just come into the world like that. Mm-hmm.
Definitely
asking questions and sort of and I think you wouldn't ask those questions if you didn't have a sort of, like, maybe the kids that ask a lot about God, you
Yep.
know, and that doesn't let up, you know, it doesn't just go away. It leads on to other things. I always feel like I was born into a family like Woody Allen's family. I don't know if you're that familiar with his films, but he
Of
used to do
course.
his
Yeah.
family like at Coney Island, and he'd have
Yeah.
all these like ponderings, like, what, you know, is there a God, you know? And his mother would smack him. What do you need to know about God?
Yeah.
And I feel like I kind of came into a family like that, so it was a sort of a little bit of an outsider, and I would drive myself nuts, and it might have been as early as 6 years old, just sort of saying, well, if there's a God, who invented God?
Yeah. Totally.
It's like the house of mirrors.
Yep. That's
And
me and my stepson's conversations all the time. Yeah. If God made everything, who made God? And yeah, of course.
It does, you know, and then it's somehow, hopefully before maybe 10, the wisdom set in, just like, my mind doesn't have the capacity for this. My mind is limited. And I think that's a kind of big insight for a kid.
Huge. And for a 10-year-old.
It's a huge.
Yeah. I think there's like 30, 40, 50-year-olds that are having that insight for the first time, you know, and
only because it was so painful. But, you know, like, maybe that's the part of spiritual growth, is you hit walls that you know that you can't penetrate, that there's some suffering there. So it's like, okay, you know, let's see. Show me a different way.
Definitely. So another theme that I notice when I either talk with people over this podcast, just hear people's stories in general, and definitely in my own experience, has been you get here because of seeming suffering and pain, and you get here. So like I used to get emotional. I would say this, but I've said it enough. I don't too much anymore. I found this stuff because I had to, because I had other lives counting on me. I had 5 kids, and it's coming. I had 5 kids, a wife. Yeah, I know. Sorry. I
love that emotional availability, though. It's a truth.
I had to find a way to hold it together for them, right? And it sounds whatever, self-serving or whatever, but I just know that if I was alone in the world, I could have just gotten by with video games and Hot Pockets and the bare minimum, and I couldn't do that. I had to figure out something. And the very quick punchline summary is everything kind of led to Paul, and and Paul wouldn't like to hear this, but nothing's created more relief in this life, in this expression, than finding that message. Nothing's created more traveling lighter. Nothing's created more and I really, you know, subjectively, it's my own opinion, but I've had a few reports from other people. I'm a better dad. I'm a more patient. I'm a better just person to be around because of that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But all that is to get back to, it was the pain and suffering and kind of the necessity is the mother of invention. It was kind of a necessity. I had to figure it out, you know.
That's so interesting. I have so many questions for you. You'll kill me if I go down this path.
I know. Don't
I am wondering what the suffering was. Like, you know, was the suffering thing to do with not being in touch with yourself, or, you know, or the self, let's say, or the freedom?
Yeah.
Was there a lack? Could you?
No, I'm not gonna let you interview me for one. So let me start.
I'd love to, but let's bookmark that, because I think that's a really important story.
Yeah. I guess if I could just do a super quick summary. So seeing it, hindsight's 2020, right? So looking at the problem from the solution, we'll say, to use a Paul kind of metaphor. I was trying to play. I was God. Playing God, trying to play God. I was, I thought that I could hold it all together, basically, and it was giving it up to that higher power, the whatever, the mystery.
I could understand that.
Yeah, and I always sort of had just a generally happy demeanor, you know. And I always thought like maybe my brain creates more serotonin than other people's. Like I just,
I love that.
even though I should be depressed, I'm not. A lot of the time, I'm very happy.
It's so funny when it all comes down to all these complicated.
I know, right?
Hormones.
Exactly,
it's chemicals.
Yeah.
It's all...
and then personally, you just think of it as just luck. It's just the roll of the dice. Like you ended up. I had nothing to do with creating a brain.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, but we're not going to interview me. We're going to get back to you.
Well, I think
talking about totally. Mm-hmm. So you're saying you're 10 years old. You got a hint of the fact that your brain is not going to figure it out. Basically, it's a finite tool.
It was a surrender. Yeah, yes. It was a surrender. But I always use this word, but I can't think of a better word. Like the posturing was still in the same direction. Like the wanting to know, and
seeking. Maybe we could call it.
Yeah. There was definitely seeking. And do you I'm interviewing you. But I think I wonder if part of that was because there was still such a strong memory of the connectedness to everything. And then the sort of shocks that come naturally of separation, of the ego forming, but there was still such a strong memory of or knowing even of that connection. I remember like always feeling somebody was with me,
totally.
And then the wake up moment that like, oh, I think I was in this hallway at school and when it happened, it was sort of like, oh, maybe it's just me.
I'm the one. Yeah, totally.
It's sort of like the first thought that I might be deluded or something.
Yeah, that's the other thing that comes in too. You start thinking you're crazy. For me, so I'm a little bit younger. True. The movie, The Truman Show, with
yeah. How old were you?
I don't know. I was probably less than 10, maybe 10. I don't know.
Oh, wow. That must have been amazing.
Jim Carrey's another. Have you listened to any Jim Carrey's more recent, like crazy philosophical rants?
He sort of intertwines with, who's the other big star that has also found non-duality and.
I don't know. Jim Carrey's the only one that comes to mind. I know there's some other ones out there.
Russell Brand.
Oh, Russell Brand, yes, who is awesome.
They both have that really fiery energy and bigger.
And Russell Brand's interview with Pete Holmes is one of my favorite episodes.
I think I listened to that. Yeah. They're just as on fire as each other. Yeah.
So getting back to The Truman Show, I remember seeing that as a kid, and then it didn't like put it in my brain. It reaffirmed something I had always kind of experienced of thinking. The whole, you know what I mean? Like the whole world is, it's, you could say it almost as super self-centeredness, but like the whole world is conspiring and creating this movie that I'm kind of playing, you know?
Yeah.
And then the other image that came in my head when I was super young, and then I just put it away, and it's come back since I've gotten into the non-duality of that. There wasn't a camera on me, but like my head was the camera. It's you know what
wow I mean? Yeah, like you were like this
was the epicenter of and so one of my favorite things to do. Have we talked about the Headless Way at all?
The guy from England.
Yeah.
I don't think we have.
I think you'd freaking love it. It's my all-time favorite exercise. My all-time favorite thing to do is Headless Way.
Bring me back to it, because there was a period that I was more familiar with it than I am now.
Okay, so the names aren't coming to me. Damn it. Douglas Hoffman?
Harding.
Douglas Harding.
Yeah.
Douglas Harding wrote it. He was a British, I think kind of like a Joseph Campbell-y, kind of like into myth and into.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, that was his academic background. And then he had like Sharon in the hallway at school, he had a moment actually in the Himalayas of all places of, oh, I have no head. I can't see my head where it.
Oh, I don't remember that. I don't remember that it was that intrinsic experience.
And I think even I think I even heard that maybe he had it somewhere else, but then for the book it sounded better to say he had it in the Himalayas.
That's a sidebar.
Yeah, exactly. But when I heard this a couple years back, I heard that through Sam Harris's book, Waking Up. He brings up The Headless Way and Douglas Harding.
Because he has a method, right, for sort of self-examination.
It's a practice. He calls it the science of the first person, or the science of subjectivity. It's the coolest freaking thing ever. I could do an entire podcast on The Headless Way. It's
great.
It's the coolest, simplest thing I've found anywhere ever. And I do it multiple times a day. It's just, you get to the point where you look for your own head, right?
Yeah, it's crazy.
And then kind of, and there's kind of no
just
answer.
Just even hearing it,
yes,
it sort of meets the truth. When
I say it to people, when I hear people say it, I say, for me, it's an energetic kind of Kundalini thing pops up a lot of just like, look for your own head. Like, oh shit. Like, it's like being on mushrooms again, real quick. I'm like, I guess any sense of self, any sense of location, any sense of relativity just can melt away real quick. And you feel kind of like you're lucid dreaming, and very quickly.
Yeah.
It's a really cool thing to do.
Oh, cool. Yeah. I'll look forward to that. I come across him periodically, and I guess it was, and I think he even came to like some non-duality conference. I don't think he died that long ago.
I don't think so. But
the guy who 15 years ago or something, it was a frail, that's sort of, now I'm really off track.
So he had, no, it's all good. He had a student that kind of has passed along the message.
Neat.
And oh my God, so this guy, I should take freaking notes ahead of time. The guy who is his student, who I can't think of his name, but he's been on Sam Harris's podcast, and he actually did a Headless Way program that if you are part of his podcast, that you can go in and do the exercises with them.
Cool.
And it's freaking
all right.
This is it. Sam Harris doesn't sponsor this podcast, but I'm gonna throw it out there anyway. It's the coolest freaking thing out there. I did it the other day, and just tears rolled down my face, and I kind of guided my buddy through it when we were sitting in a van, and same thing, tears running down his face.
I've got to go.
I know. Few more minutes. It's it just speaks to my own little stuff. Everyone has their own thing. I get similar when I go to Paul's meetings. It's especially something about the Wednesday night ones, the room, the acoustics, I just, insane stuff goes on.
I know you too. Yeah. Like when I've had insane stuff, you've been like, I know. I know. It's crazy, right?
I know. Yeah. And again, that's a cool, just to have somebody there, like, you're not crazy. Someone else is doing the same thing. And even if, and I go back, I'll go through very scientific minded phases where I'll be like, it's all in your head. But I'm more and more making peace with that. Like, if it is all in your head, who cares? This is all kind of in your head in a way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that doesn't mean to say it's not of interest.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Exactly. It's incredibly interesting, and that's the science of the first. Yeah. Exactly. And if it's not, man, I'm sorry. It's a rough incarnation, because it's just nothing more fun, and it's cool. Like, there's no requirements. You don't have to buy it on Amazon to get it. You literally.
I have a Sam Harris question. Has Sam Harris himself, I mean, I know he sort of has this beautiful scientific way of taking this subject and making and meeting truth with it, but what is Sam Harris's own experience? Does he write about having a sudden awakening or
so I obviously, he's another one of my go-to guys. He's up there with Paul and Pete Holmes. Maybe, my very short list of like people that have allies through this life. I've never met him.
I have to turn you on to some females. Not that there's,
So you mentioned earlier, my favorite female spiritual teacher, probably Gangaji. She's she's brought tears to my eyes multiple times too.
And it's a very different path. It's the bhakti path. And some of my friends are like, I could never bow to a teacher, and all that. It's like, well, you haven't been cracked open, like, why would you? That's not your path. But in that moment, I take my dog, I'd be bowing not to make a parallel with,
of course, no, yeah, no.
she's a very direct experience.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, I feel so. Ramana, I think we've talked about before, is my go-to.
Mine too.
Yeah, if there's one symbol, object, form,
yeah,
it's Ramana, and so I feel so much of that through Gangaji. And of course she has her own unique. It comes through the water comes through the hose.
So you really like Gangaji? Yeah,
I absolutely love her.
Yeah. The velvet voice. I know. I listened to her for years. A couple of driving my kids in the back of the car.
Yeah.
We are one. Oh, thanks. I needed that.
Yeah.
She's really a really great communicator.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sometimes I wonder, again, speaking of the alchemy, is it the words?
Yeah.
You say the Wednesday night meeting does it for you. Is it the words?
Well, the words are pointing to something, right?
Yeah. I feel like there's the words, like sort of going back to the point in the beginning of this. There's the alchemy. There is an alchemy. And
there's a relationship between. I talk about this all the time. That like I grew up listening to Alan Watts. Getting way back, I don't even remember. The context. Cool. The context.
Talking about getting your teeth into.
Yeah. So when getting way back to like when you first heard somebody and you go, oh, I'm not crazy, and then like you were saying, finding the tapes, finding whatever it could. For me, it was Alan Watts on KPFA on Berkeley Public Radio.
Oh wow! What were you like? How old were you?
10, 11, 12, somewhere in that range. And I could just hear that iconic voice. And I can hear him talking. And I normally would hear him when it was like a drive. They were trying to sell tapes or whatever,
Oh yeah, they still do the same drive.
Exactly. Yeah, right.
I love it. Then you get to hear hours for free.
Yeah. And so I remember hearing him talk and just going, oh my God, he's saying the thing that no one else is saying. And other people were, I just hadn't found them. He's pointing in a way that, because my background grew up in
I do, and I'm thinking about it as you speak, to be quite honest.
Of course, and I was told, Jesus is the way, and mixed in with all this weird metaphysical, psychic, energy work stuff. And so it just never clicked with me. Obviously, as a kid, I knew something was up. And then the first hint of hearing another human being out there saying what resonated internally was Alan Watts, right?
Wow.
And then I remember like going, God, can I scrape together $120 to get the total, CD set or whatever it was, tapes back then.
Amazing. Like you really should not have heard that message at all. You should have been like in your ego-centered body, beating the crap out of some brother or something. It's just amazing how early you were awake to this.
Well, shoot. Yeah. Same with you, though. I mean.
Yeah. Right? Yeah, it is. It doesn't really lodge.
So I was just going to say what I was getting at. What I was getting at was, so hearing that back then, and I've heard some of the talks 100 times, maybe the same talk that he gave it, because then when YouTube came around, you could just play it on loop forever, and there's endless. You find nothing but talks. And so the metaphor I like to use is, it's like when you hear a love song when you're a kid before you've fallen in love, you go, oh, that's a cool song, right? And then you're falling in love and you hear the same love song and you go, oh, it speaks to you. This person, this person is feeling what I'm feeling. This is what falling in love is. And so Alan Watts's talks, all these talks have taken on new characters. So I'm following you here. So this is all getting back to, is it the words, right? Is it the words? Pointing to something. So it's an alchemy. It's a relationship in the message and how the message is being received. Right. The X factor is how it's being received. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And so I've gone back. I told Keith this the other day. The last talk Paul put up that he was in the back, when he was in the backyard before quarantine hit. Heavy. Yeah. I've gone back and listened to that 5 times. Why
that one?
Who knows? I could tell you. I could tell you a story.
The birds were chirping. The beautiful thing.
I could tell you a story, but when I listen to it, there's particular parts, especially when he brings up the Course in Miracles, where it's just a sense of, oh my God, I'm home. I'm so home. I realized I had never not been home, but I'm just in the warmest comfort in, you know, in the freaking arms of my mom, like whatever the hell you want to call it. And then this funny thing goes on in your brain of like, well, this is a one-time thing. The next time you listen to it, it won't do the same thing. And it does. It's very reliable.
Wow.
You know, and I get, when I do the Zoom calls, I get hints of that, hints of all sorts of other cool stuff, but something about that one,
it collides perfectly.
Yeah. And that
beautiful
collaboration, wherever I'm at right now, maybe I come back and listen in 10 years and I go, it doesn't do anything for me, you know, but I'm in love in a certain way that certain love song is hitting.
Oh, right. I see. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. You know, I think this is on topic. Going back to our lovely Paul, he's just so good for stories. I just love mining him for stories.
Yeah.
So without giving too many details, even though this is total transparent for him, I believe, at some point he had to go to court because somebody was disputing some things and calling him a cult leader. And first of all, the story is hysterical because he's like, I'm not used to talking in court. I'm just used to being carted away because of his past.
You show up, you're guilty, and they put cuffs on. Yeah.
So he said, well, the judge listened, you know, part of the process was the judge had to listen to the YouTube videos.
Oh my God.
And I thought, oh, like, did she think you were in a cult, you know? And he said, no. He said, you know, people will hear truth. You know, there's a resonating.
Holy shit.
And she was fine with him. You know, she said you could get, you know, whatever he was fighting for. And I think that's it at the bottom. I think it's a knowing. There's a knowing. Yes. And then there's many paths to it. It might be, you know, I'm not even that good at explaining non-duality. If somebody says to me, what's non-duality? I'm like, you know, once I say
it's one of the hardest things.
That's not right.
Of course. It's one of the hardest things to explain. It's like,
it's always one step removed once words come into play. But there's a knowing. There's a knowing. And maybe that's the same with that particular video. It hits, you know, somehow it bypasses your brain, as Paul would say, and it bypasses something, and it's that knowing. And the same thing for, you know, by good fortune, that even that LSD, there was a knowing that arose, that met that moment, that, you know, I wouldn't recommend chemically inducing, but
please don't.
There's knowing, there's truth. I think there's, you know, and the fact that it's also not like, this is the way, you know, like your Lord Jesus Christ or Moses or this, and there's this division. It's just a knowing we all have, you know. It's and it's formless, and it's got like infinite amount of forms at the same time. So,
I thought you said you weren't good at explaining non-duality. That was
really? Did that make sense? Oh, cool. Let's bottle it. I don't think it made sense.
It made sense to me.
But I think that's the thing. It doesn't really make sense. And I told you this story, but I always check myself when I tell the story, because I think the danger is like, I had an experience. It's my badge. Look how and it. Please no, that's not. You're reporting. Could actually be in the way. Yeah.
No. You're reporting something. I'm with you.
But when my dad died, I told you that I had a shared death experience with him, and it's very hard in words, you know. But what came through was so familiar. Like, so I went into the formless, and the takeaway is the experience was, this was a dream. But in that experience, which is so tangible now, that was so, like, it doesn't fade like a dream fades. You know?
It was as true as this moment, if not truer.
It's truer. It was truer, and it was like such a real, like, such a knowing, going back to, like, this is truth. This is, and it's not truth, it's just an emness. It's just it's so
You said
Oh
before
God,
this.
I really fucked that up.
No,
I'm
you
so
didn't.
sorry.
No,
I
no,
thought
no,
I
no,
had
no,
that.
no. I love it. And
So
you were
it was
saying,
so clear what was a dream. It was so
yeah,
clear what was a dream because there was not really dreaming. It was hysterical. Everything
yeah,
was hysterical. Existence was hysterical.
yeah.
So and there was just this it's so, oh God.
Well,
Yeah.
something you
I think
said, which
when you know,
when you know, yeah.
that's
Something you said that stuck with me still to this day is very metaphorically beautiful was the feeling of a smile before you smile. Yeah, that's
and
like, put it on a t-shirt. That's really cool. Write a book
and
about it. Yeah,
that was all of existence. That was the
wow.
pregnant existence that we are. Oh
Yeah.
God.
No, it's not. You gotta. I thought you said we need to let go of the filter.
You're right.
Let go of the
But
filter.
yeah, that's as close as I could sort of
Yeah,
get to
well,
it.
it's beautiful, and
Um,
I think I mentioned it last podcast. Who I shared his book with you, the guy I found right before Paul, Michael Rodriguez, who wrote the book.
yeah.
Yeah,
I was wondering if you were in contact with him now.
I'm not. I talked to him about a year ago over Zoom or Skype or whatever, and I've been considering reaching out to him again just to check
It'd
in.
be
So,
interesting.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
he's super cool and out there.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
but
Real
at the same
humble
time very
guy, right?
humble and grounded,
Yeah.
and yeah, just very clear teaching. And
Yeah.
so I found him about a few months before Paul, and I at the time was kind of like, Paul's more my head teacher and Michael was more my heart teacher, you know. And
Do
again,
you think that it's conditioning the teachers were attracted to?
it's gotta be, right?
Partially a clear message, but what's that?
It's gotta be. What else could it
Yeah,
be than
like I love
conditioning
the
and
fact that he's from New York. Like he just cracks
Mhm.
me up,
Yeah, totally.
So speaking of feeling home, so maybe there's a little less defenses. And when people say, I'm so glad you sort of receive Gurmai, a lot of people, because it has somewhat of a sort of Hindu flavor to it, and there's a lot of issues around that. And but her message to me is just the same.
It is,
So
yeah.
I
Different
think what gets
flavor
in
of
the
the same,
way,
point to the same thing.
yeah, if you really look at the core, that's how I'm hearing it. That's how it's coming through here.
Mhm.
So there's so many teachers out there, and I think we hear the ones that maybe we have less conditioning around.
Maybe. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
so a thing about Paul, it's so funny because he looks a lot like my biological dad, which I don't have the best relationship with.
Oh
Which is
wow.
funny, right? And I've never said this to
Yeah, you
anyone.
think that
Yeah.
might be
Yeah, you would think that
in the
could be a
way.
barrier, right? And he
Yeah.
actually also looks a lot like the cult leader that used to run my cult.
Well, it is a cult.
Yeah, I know it is. But at least we're consciously in it and free to leave, I hope. I've missed meetings for about a month.
Well, we actually would prefer you didn't speak to your family and drink this.
Yeah. All at the same time. But no, so again, another weird spiritually experience I've had is on a Wednesday night talk. This has happened a couple times. I'll look at Paul's face and it starts to morph and like become a ray of light, and then it becomes my dad's face, and then it becomes Bill, who used to be the runner, the guy who ran the cult's face, and it goes back to Paul, and it it becomes Jesus Christ's face. And yeah, this is so embarrassing, but hey,
and I want to make sense of that. I noticed my mind's like, well, what? Wow, what does that mean?
I know, and there's too much there. If I even grab onto it, it's gonna be so much extra baggage. I just let it be what it is.
I wonder, one way of sort of my comfort in that is like it's all fucking a dream anyway.
Exactly.
Yep. So what comes through, is it so important who it comes through?
Well, no, and when it comes through, it's that Course in Miracles thing of dreaming yourself out of the dream. And in those moments that you recognize you're seemingly self-aware of yourself, dreaming yourself out of the dream, that's a great freaking gift, because it lightens it so much. You see it's an ethereal nothing instead of this heavy thing that's heavy on your heart and heavy on your psyche and driving you freaking nuts, right? Yeah. Right on.
Not wasted on you. Not wasted on you at all. That. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's pretty clear to me.
Yeah, and
I
something
like
else, when we keep bringing up Gangaji, which is cool. She's never really been a topic of this podcast. So one thing that she says that sticks with me, and I might get it wrong, maybe you can help me, is she talks about the feast. Is that a thing? Where she says,
it's been a while since
that when you know
probably.
the self, that's sitting down at the feast, basically. And that really resonates with me. The way that I kind of interpret it is like there's endless. It's almost like Bible Jesus-y. Like there's endless bounty of abundance just waiting for you, just right here, and
right in
right
in
front of you, in the moment. And you're actually, even though it feels like you're trying to get there, you're doing so much to deny it and refuse it. And
wow, that's so true. So true.
Yeah, that's
so true.
That's something I wish I knew the exact talk where she talks about that, but
I think that's where the lightness comes in. That flavor of lightness. Yeah. Oh my God, I'm constantly defending this separation.
Of course. Yeah, that's what conditioning is, right?
Do you like Paul's, like, I think one of my go-tos is and maybe you could tell the story a little better, the glove thing. Like his girlfriend broke up with him, and he was like seeing he wasn't the glove, and then he was the glove, and then he wasn't the glove.
Yeah.
He was going back into the story, and then he's free, and then it was going back. I feel some kinship with that.
Absolutely. No, that's a great metaphor for my freaking life. The last
yeah.
Right. As soon as you get
apply to all.
Absolutely. Yeah. As soon as you get a single sense that you're not the glove, I think the on the glove and being lost and forgetting that you're the hand goes back and forth. It seems like for freaking ever. Like,
yeah.
And that's a thing that's been landing with me on Paul's talks a lot. Yeah. That's been landing with me on Paul's talks, and Keith and I have talked about this, that it literally, and he said it before, but it's just landing so much harder. Like, if you want the identification with self to stop, if you want the process of selfing to stop, then you need to do
you're
the same.
In trouble.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you need to get that to happen. You'd have to do the same thing to make your heart or your lungs stop. You'd have to die, right?
Yeah,
it's gonna happen.
Part of proprioceptors, and what we do in the body is organized into a separate self.
It's the structure of the mental state is to do that. But what can happen, and this is so cool, God, he said this once, and in a Wednesday night talk, I looked over at Keith and I said, dude, that's so fucking good. And he shook his head like, I know. where he goes, he said, it's all the what you're not is going to be happening. It's going to be arising. It's going to be showing up. This is a paraphrase, of course. Now, what that does most of the time is we use that to create or infer a separate self, right? We use all the selfing to create a self.
Well, I hear that sort of thing.
You're identified to it. You're grasping it.
Your senses.
And Paul said something along the lines of, it's going to happen anyway. But what happens, he was kind of speaking as, the Buddha, as the awareness of it. What happens is all of that is actually used to identify you're not that. All of that is to recognize. Yeah, the same thing is going to happen. And when you're stuck in it, when you're stuck believing you're the glove, you're absolutely convinced everything reassures
you have all the proof.
Glove. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
you have to be the glove. And then as soon as it comes off, you can create a relationship. Who can create? But it can happen with grace that you're always everything shows that that's the glove, which means it can't be me because I'm the hand.
Yeah.
And that can sort of, these are all very tricky words in non-duality, but it can sort of establish, it can sort of, what's the funny
right.
Stabilize, right? Stabilize is a funny thing. But it can kind of stabilize seemingly across the dreaming of going, all of this is the glove, I'm the hand. Right.
Yeah.
If you want to call it something.
Yeah.
You're not even there.
Yeah. Lion, sheep. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
That's another one.
I think what he says also is there's just an exhaustion. Like when you don't keep feeding it, and I don't know if you can ever feed the hand glove or the false self.
Yeah.
At once sort of things are seen in quite the same way anyway. But what's interesting is like we just have like 4 or 5 themes, you know, there's really not that many.
Exactly. It has like 4 tricks that it goes the golden oldies. I like that.
Even though it seems like billions of things to tend to, there's really, you know, like 4 or 5 strands of suffering that we're really attached to. And I take it as really good news is that in his experience, when you just stop feeding it, when there's less interest, because you get the feeling that news is for Bob, not Sharon, you know, it's like, am I really that interested in it? That it actually will just dismantle itself, you know? So I think, you know, going back into the establishing, I think it's just happened, you know, it just sort of happens when the interest, there's a little, according to him, there's a little less interest in feeding it, you know. It is somewhat to do with energy too, I think.
Definitely. You know, I mean, that's one way it manifests. You see it through the energy or through the interest or through the mental state, but just something is getting worked out again, that this tiny little 10-pound brain is not going to be able to understand or wrap itself around. So it does come back to a faith in something I've been saying to my wife. It's just funny because I almost never talk to her about non-duality, but she'll say things like, you know, hey, we brought the kids for a drive over by Pacifica, and she goes, God, when I was a kid, I used to love going by the beach, and they're not really into it. And what I'll say is, this is a new mantra that just came in from me. There's work being done on other levels. Have faith that there's work being done.
Oh, levels, I got that. Yeah. I got that. Again, it's beyond words. Yeah. Oh gosh, why the hell that one made me want to cry.
Yeah, I think once kids get involved, right, it becomes more touching to me. I got it. So since I'm talking about my kids, I got to say this. Last night, Amina, my 6-year-old, just totally blows my mind all the time.
Really?
Oh God,
she's an old soul.
She's a super old soul, very crazy deep thinker. So I'll hit you with one real quick. This isn't the main story, but about a year back, her favorite place to go is Barnes and Nobles. She loves books.
Mine too. I love her.
Oh, right on. Yeah, you guys would get along.
Or independent books, or whatever.
Oh yeah,
a
of course.
Bookstore.
Bookstore. Barnes and Nobles happens to be the closest one to where we live, but yeah, we like, we go to Berkeley and go to the ones there. And she writes books too. I'm just bragging about my daughter now. She writes books every day. I come home and she wrote me a book, about her being so happy with me coming back to work.
Oh, would she be my life coach?
I know. No, she's already mine. So we go to the Barnes and Nobles one time, and she's ahead. She's advanced for age for reading. She can read at like a 3rd grade level. She's in kindergarten, and she started reading all the sections of the bookstore, and she goes, nonfiction and fiction and literature and cooking, and then she goes, she sees the self-help section, and she's looking around, and she goes, Papa, I see the self-help. Where's the help other people section? I know.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Like she would even think that way.
It wasn't even.
I'm still in self-help. Oh my God. Please, what's her number?
I know. But just like, it was a given to her, like, okay, there's clearly self-help. Wow. So where's the help other people? Shouldn't that be a bigger section? Isn't that more important to like help other people?
It's so obvious.
Yeah.
Help other people. Oh, I love it.
That's freaking. So that's a little hint into her cool mind. So last night she comes to me and she goes, first she asked Angelo, her older brother, my stepson, she goes, what is spirit? Right. And I know. And he goes, I'm going to have to pass this one off to Papa. and in those moments, there's this weird, like, my kind of go-to framing is say as little as possible. like, you know what I mean? Don't brush it off, because that's heavy of just being like, don't worry about it.
That's true. Acknowledge.
Yeah. Don't be the Woody Allen mom and just say,
yeah. What do you need to know about spirit?
Sit down and do your homework. But I don't want to over explain and become a lecturer, and and
go through your own
exactly and projection on. So what I basically tried to do in the moment was explain to a 6-year-old what consciousness is. So when she said, what is spirit? I said, well, let's go look in a mirror. Okay. You see your body, right? These are Amina's cheeks, Amina's head, right? So this is your body. We'll call this Amina's body. So your spirit would be that, that is helping you to see out of your eyes, or that which is helping you to hear out of your ears. So the ears can't hear on their own. They need your spirit to be able to hear. Your eyes can't see by themselves. And she goes, and then just to show you, I just can't, it's almost unbelievable. She goes, so when you die, the spirit leaves your body. This is a 6-year-old.
Yeah.
And
Incredible.
I go, yeah, that's one way we could put it.
And you didn't tell her that. No,
exactly. And then I was waiting for, and I bit my tongue of, she didn't ask, well, then where does the spirit go?
Yeah. There's tomorrow.
Yeah. So I'm prepared for that question when it comes.
Wait a minute.
Yeah. But she got the very, the atheist take, I guess, of so when you're dead, it's over? Yeah, it's over. And she goes, and that was another, about maybe less than a year ago of hey, Papa, everyone dies, huh? That means I'm gonna die. That means you're gonna die. And and in the moment, it was just yeah, I didn't want to give her then we get to meet again in heaven. I didn't, want to give her that. I didn't want to add.
Let her meet her own truth.
And it's heartbreaking and beautiful to look in the eyes of a 5-6-year-old.
Oops, sorry.
Oh, I lost. Okay, I thought maybe you're.
I went on low battery. I suppose I should do something. I think we'll make it. We're fine.
Yeah. What time? I don't even. We're over an hour at least, right?
Are we? Wow. 1:20? Well, I don't even know what time we started. Probably about an hour.
About an hour. It just.
I don't want to give you something more to edit though. 10 minutes. Wow.
Look at that time. I'm probably not going to edit any of this, but anyway. So and look at me talking about my daughter and myself way too much. I did get
but I think it's on theme. I think it's again these truths that arise that bypass the brain.
Exactly. And then, watching that in a young person is.
Then she's at a stage where she wants to give words to it, and it comes through.
Yeah,
it's really interesting. It's a fascinating thing. And then my mind goes to the opposite, because that's what it does. And somebody like Amelia, Paul's girlfriend, doesn't even want to hear about non-duality. Paul says, and he's like, she gets it. So why discuss? So there's not really the interest, but she travels so much lighter because she gets these truths. So there's that too, I guess. It's not always a sort of leaning to need to know. Sometimes it's just a knowing, and there's a lightness, and we know those people.
Of course.
Again, they're like children, and or there's a quality that's ageless that comes in the
And Paul's a great example of someone who actually doesn't care about this stuff outside of 2 hours a week. The rest of the,
I love hanging out with him. He's the most fun.
Yeah, and
he's
someone
the most fun.
You or me, or maybe some other people in the Sangha, we're a little more infected with it. That it's fun. This is what fires me up. I always give the example, for someone it might be skiing or reading romance novels or what. But when you know it, and if it was something else for me, I would dive into that. If it was playing mariachi music, I would,
because it's alive and it's fascinating.
Of course, right?
Yeah.
But this just happens to be there's no ego gratification. It just is really freaking fun. I get turned on.
Paul even said, I was surprised to hear him say at lunch or something, if I probably wasn't doing this, I would probably be going to see other people. Yeah. Which I thought that was interesting. Yeah. It's sometimes I think I can though sometimes go to these satsangs and there's a heaviness, and a wanting to play with words and sort of get the speaker or teacher out and and the fact is there's a million contradictions and you can nail somebody, and that I'm not so interested in.
The interest in that definitely dies and gets Yes, please. A great example of that I love was, I can't think of his name, but he's a famous psychologist, and he particularly does early childhood stuff out of Canada.
Eric? Oh, I just know the old guys.
Yeah, so he sat down with Adyashanti at, I think it was Sand or something. Yeah. And this is like the formative guy on early childhood education and conditioning. And he's a very super intellectual, smart guy. And and it is so funny to see, like, he started meditating, a month ago, and he goes to Adyashanti, and he it's so funny to see that he's convinced he found the loophole in the teaching, right. In the same way that we all were convinced, right?
Oh, it's so
yeah. And he comes and it's very, intellectual. He goes, okay, so you're telling me when I go to meditate to try to stop thinking, but then I'm thinking about not stopping thinking. How do I get out of that, right? It's like,
but I guess it's a really good point. Like, what did you call it? The meta. It really does get meta.
Yeah, very quickly. Yeah. And it, even in the meta-ness, this is something I talk with Mike Z about all the time, is that like those loops are infinite. The like trying to not thinking about
exactly.
It can seemingly go on.
Again, the 6-year-old in me had some wisdom when she was like, the mind's not going to get it.
Yeah.
God before the God before the God who created God. Yeah, the mind's just not going to get it. It's not going to get it.
Yeah, and once the kind of, in a Paul way of saying it, the futility of that scene, then you can kind of give up on that and be more available to, a simpler truth,
Yeah, and at the same time, and I want to kind of just rush in and say, he's really good. He's really articulate, Paul, with the meta.
Incredible.
At the same time.
Yes, I think the most that, at least that speaks to me. I mean, he gets into places that other people, other non-dual people I find on YouTube, whatever, just dance around. Like he's, and then I was talking with Keith about this the other day, and getting back to the relationship, the third thing that's going on is, so often I'll have a mental movement, a thought, and he'll talk about it as it's happening, like, and
oh wow.
So like, you try to see what you're not, from what you are, but then you see that's just more of what you, and then like literally
you try to see what you're not from what you're not.
You're what you're not. Exactly. You try to see from what you're not. And then in that moment you go, oh, like you caught me with my pants down.
Right.
That was,
it's the
and then
the house of fucking mirrors.
Yes, exactly. And who caught who, and that cool, trippy little, so psychedelic and so
what is it then that in us that wants to hear this message? That's the question.
Exactly. Who knows? I'm not going to try and answer it, but right. Exactly. But
so even like Ganga, that is something that I do remember Gangaji say. Even the I don't know what she said, but let's say the personality even wants to know freedom.
Yeah.
And truth.
It can't. The personality wants to be free.
And it's like
the one that really hits for me, like if you're at a beginning stage, is the personality wants to be free from the personality as the personality. Right?
Well,
free from self as self, right? It's that last little step of like, of course you're actually inherently free of all of it, but that sense wants to be free as it just can't happen. And once you see,
and then once you know you're free, that's a never-ending thing. You just kind of drop it and let it. There's freedom in that, in just letting it be, do what it does.
Yep.
Yeah.
And here we are.
Yeah.
So I just realized we went through that whole thing and didn't once bring up the fact that there's a pandemic going on and that we're all sheltering. I should have started with that.
So what the hell are you going to think about during a pandemic? Talking about meta.
Yeah.
Right. You want to touch on it? You want? How are you How are you guys doing?
Yeah, we're doing great. There's not a lot to report. The biggest thing for the kids is that the playgrounds are closed down. That bums them out. So having to get a little bit more creative with, but we've gone on more hikes and more done more stuff in the backyard and set up a
And you're still working too?
And I'm still working. Yeah.
Thank you. Everybody, thank you. Yeah.
It's, it's.
Thank you for working. That's not an easy thing to do.
It's not, but it's nothing compared to what healthcare workers are doing. So like they're 100% the real heroes. They're putting their actual.
I think my husband's a hero for going to the store. It's like I haven't driven in like a month.
Right on.
I have no interest in people right now.
Well, that's good, and that's very socially responsible, and it's getting back to that. The grocery store people are heroes too.
That's right.
Putting themselves out
You're
there.
right.
I just think the healthcare workers you're exposed so much more. You're putting your health and safety at risk to save people that wouldn't be saved otherwise, and you're working crazy hours. And I went into this last podcast a big old spiel, but they're freaking heroes.
You know what my pandemic thought was this morning? Pandemic thought of I was sitting outside, and the birds, I think a lot of us are experiencing the birds really differently now. They're so much louder, and I was thinking, they're talking to me more now that I'm not poisoning. I haven't driven in my car. I mean, I'm still probably poisoning them in my lifestyle and my God knows what. But there's definitely been a veil lifted without these cars on the
less
road.
Pollution. So now this is getting into some stoner thoughts.
Gross.
A little
the void.
Yeah. So I took an edible over the weekend, and I was thinking about like, there's essential work, right? Everything's still running enough right now. There's the essential work, making sure people are taken care of, the lights are on, the garbage is taken out, getting food.
I know, all our basic Maslow needs,
totally. It's
for most of us,
for the first time in modern history, it's so getting down to what is actually essential, and then I was thinking the economy is gonna, the society's gonna go back, but it's gonna go back, and it's gonna be different, obviously. How could it not be, right?
It'll never be the same.
And I was thinking, like, as long as the essential stuff is taken care of, everything else is totally, this is, again, a very stoner thought. It'll make more sense if you're high. Everything else is just a game. Like, I'm going to pay you for this, and you're going to pay me for this. But it's not essential. We don't need it.
No.
It's all play. It's all.
Right.
Yes. Oh, you disappeared again.
I'll disconnect that.
Are you running low on battery? We are recording.
Sure.
Cool. Okay.
Sure. Okay.
Back from our commercial break.
I know we're sort of letting the magic, the alchemy happen, but I did want to sort of just check in with you and just see if there's anything you were still interested in, pondering that might not have been. Oh, is there something going on in the background?
I don't know. Is there? Hey,
I hear a male voice.
No, it's all good. It's just going to be on the podcast.
That's the beauty of these homemade things.
No, I'm kidding, guys. You don't have to shut
up. Now, are you talking to a bunch of people or just one?
Just one very important person.
Hi, sweetheart. Yeah, it's great to have a glimpse into, what we do.
Yeah, no, totally. I know. Yeah. I keep joking. I never mentioned the company, but Paul's message has spread throughout this, multinational. I mean, in a small way, but in a cool way, that it's connected with a lot of people that you would never think this little Fortune 500, company would, a very kind of male construction worker dominant place. It's hit with a lot of people, and I brought a lot to talks, actually.
Oh, is it okay to say what it is?
I don't say the name. Just
okay.
I don't know. Yeah, it's the one role. That's the one non-transparency.
Again, it's like that. The judge that he showed the video to. It's like, oh, he's a goner now.
Yeah. So I feel like that would be the one. I'm a goner now, but I think people listen to the podcast know I'm an electrician. You can put the pieces together. In California, in the Bay Area.
Oh, right. Yeah, I was trying not to touch that. Yeah, I think truth is true. I don't know. And when I say that, I know that's been applied to many things that I would not call truth. So even the word truth is like, oh, that's a little culty, and
absolutely,
but I don't have a better
I like Paul says an unspoken yes. It's a nice way.
Oh, wow. I don't remember that.
Oh, really? Oh, God. He says it all the time, I think.
That's the funny thing about it.
Yeah.
When I, not to make it the Paul well, it's too late for that.
It's already the Paul podcast. He's been the subject. I think I got through one without saying Paul, my one with Elizabeth, and it was a short 20-minute one.
That's amazing. So when I first started going to see him, I did not understand a word he would say. I even said that to him. Yes. You too?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I have I think I've said it before, so I won't get into it too deep, but yeah, I found the podcast and stories change over time. So I don't know.
You mean the YouTube videos?
I actually found the podcast, the recording first before the YouTube videos.
I didn't even know there was a podcast.
Yeah. I just saw Zen Bitch Slap. What the hell is that?
That was a podcast as well?
It still is a podcast. Yeah. That's what I normally listen through, actually, is audio instead of the YouTube.
But it's it's the same thing, but just without
it's a way of getting the audio file, basically.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. And so I started listening to it, and I kind of at the time had a rule of like, if it's not interesting in 5 minutes, I'll give up on it, right? I'll give it 5 minutes. And so I was listening to it while driving, and I remember the audio quality is not that good, and he's saying fuck this and fuck that, which no spiritually non-duality people really do. There's a few out there, but no one at his level.
No, right? He couldn't be the real deal.
Yeah. And after 5 minutes, I go, I don't know what the hell he's talking about. Right, which is a lot of people report that. It's all going over my head, right?
Same here.
Yeah, and I go, but I feel like there's something special here. There's at least something different being communicated, or in a different way than I've heard from anyone else.
Yeah.
And in it wasn't like I gotta keep listening to this and dig into what there wasn't a lot of energy around it. I just kind of like left it on as like background elevator stuff.
Oh wow. Paul was I've done that.
And then I found myself in the morning turning on my car, and the Bluetooth and all that automatically, boom, whatever I was listening to last would come up. So it would be Paul. And I would just sort of like
be stuck with it.
Yeah. And then I would just sort of go, I'm not going to change it, so I'll just leave it on.
Right.
And it was it very much getting back to our same theme. Work was being done on another level that I wasn't aware of that slowly. And then stuff slowly started to click of like, oh, and I've told this story before, it's too boring, but I had a huge, if you want to call it that, the hugest, most significant spiritual awakening, sober thing hit me when I was listening to him while driving in the city.
No, I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh God, I'll have to listen to the.
Go back and listen to almost any other one.
Sure,
I'll give you the abbreviated version. That I was driving. Somebody asked a question to him. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was something along the lines of, well, when I see what I'm not, but then I see that seeing of what I'm not, then what is that? And then he gave his answer. And then it was it's uncommunicatable, but to try and communicate it, it was like a crazy Kundalini, crazy awakening, crazy clarifying moment. And so intense that I pulled over, and I was over by Gold Gate Park, and I walked around the park for I think maybe 2 hours.
Whoa!
Yeah, like a child again, seeing the world with new eyes, just like a psychedelic trip, and then tied in with all that, like this existential dread of like, oh my God, I'm gonna die. A lot of fear and a lot.
You were dying.
Yeah, I was dying, exactly. The last, remnants of whatever was holding on was.
Whoa! And you were still in that period with Paul of it just being a block of information you weren't even really understanding.
Yeah. No, it wasn't.
Except for this one question penetrated
something, and I hadn't seen him in person yet. I've been listening to the talks. that's the other funny thing is I always say I thought that the first few I listened to, he was in Newark or Long Island or something.
Oh, right.
And so I thought he lived over there. And then slowly over many talks I put together, he's in California, he's in San Francisco. And I looked up on the website. He was right down the street from where all this was happening. You know, I was at Golden Gate Park, you know.
And he was at the church.
10 blocks from the church, you know. Didn't know that at the time. And so that's the very abbreviated version. Then the little, again, giving it like a story, you know, like you were saying about your experience with your dad. The thing that still sticks with me is a feeling of this waterfall was kind of flowing, and the sense of self or ego was like trying to direct the waterfall my whole life. And I saw the futility in that. The waterfall was going to be what it was. And the waterfall is just me, just life, just expression, you know. And then finally I go, I can stop trying to direct it because it's pointless anyway. You know what I mean?
It's not you.
Yeah. And
it's
so
you and it's not you.
That was the one little story I could take back from
the first that's pretty dramatic. In your body, you have a lot of experiences that are quite dramatic.
Yeah. And not like no abuse or stuff like that, but just I guess it's all self-created. Like a lot of, I go through sometimes sitting in meetings, I'll go through the existential terror. It's all worthless. There's no holding on. There's no whatever. And I think I've said before, that doesn't stop or slow down, but just they become lighter. You travel lighter over those too. You know what I mean?
Right.
They stop, yeah.
Because you know there's no real danger in the same way as when you first experienced it.
Exactly. Yeah. You know, the metaphor I love and I use with my buddy all the time is like the movie. No matter how scary the movie is, there's now a recognition that it's on a screen and the screen can't be damaged by it. Whereas in the past, you believed you were the movie.
That's beautiful. It's so funny she's coming back because it's been a while. Gangaji, you know, sometimes people would have dreams of like a lion trying to eat them or something and running from the lion. She's like, let the lion eat you, see what happens. Yeah. And even I remember it also so many stories. Another guy from jail who had an awakening when she used to visit jail.
I've heard that same. Yeah, over a podcast. Yeah, where he had no inclination or whatever, and then he heard her talk or something, and he had an awakening. Yeah,
he had an awakening.
Became his guru.
But before he came in, it might be a different guy. Before he went to the meeting, not really knowing much about her, he had more terror. You know, this is some tough guy in jail that didn't experience fear like we experienced fear. He said he was more scared in his entire life, and it went beyond the brain of going into that meeting than it bypassed logic, but he had complete terror.
I believe it.
Her message is always let the terror have you. And I kind of hear that message in all of the teachers. That's how I hear it anyway, which is really good. Just to sort of wrap it up. I don't know. Can it ever be wrapped up? You know, there's so many, sometimes people say, well, I don't like that teacher because they, you know, the nuance in the message, it seems different to them. I'm not sure I could really decipher all the wording that well of a specific teacher. You know, to me it also sort of distills to the nothingness and the sameness and the, you know, that's how I hear it. But and sometimes having different teachers helps me. Some people will not have different teachers because they feel like you're digging a lot of shallow holes. I don't know if you've ever heard that.
Heard that.
You're better off
picking a hole and digging. Don't dig 10 1-foot holes, dig 1 10-foot hole. Is kind of the metaphor.
I think for me it's been fruitful to actually, sometimes the brain starts getting a hold of it, and it becomes a little like calloused, the message.
Definitely.
So then having somebody like Paul, where initially I didn't even understand what the fuck he was talking about, but I knew something. It's helpful, I think, in my opinion, sometimes listening to different teachers, because it'll it'll jar the apparatus a little.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The whole different fingers pointing at the same moon, right? It's not the finger, it's the moon. But when you point at it from different angles, then you get different perspectives on it.
I have a message that I have a question that I've been probably meaning to ask you. So your background, and I'm not interviewing you, but has the question arisen, like, how did some people get this when they're, it could be an evangelist, and it seems like somehow there's an awakening, or, the message is so different from like a non-duality teacher, but it's the same awakening. To me, it appears at the end of the road to meet up in the same place. So I find that kind of fascinating, and it kind of gets me out of dogma maybe a little. Definitely. Because like, wait a minute, you're not supposed to get this with the corrupt evangelist, guy that's in a cult, or, it appears that there's just awakening when there's awakening.
Yeah, well then again, my little bias, I'll go back to Paul's thing, us creating the meaning, right? You can create the meaning in any way you want, so another guy I really like, comes up almost every podcast, is Ram Dass. I've talked about him before, and he was a very eclectic, he was into all sorts of different stuff, and he would talk about, he would give a speech, in front of 100 people, and at the end some old lady, 90-year-old lady, would come up to her and she goes, "I know what you're talking about," and he'd be like, "Cool. Are you into this stuff? You into Hinduism and devotion?" She goes, "No, I crochet." Yeah, right. So you can get there, right? You can get there through crochet, you can get there through whoever, right? So even in something that, our conditioning, our story would be through fundamental evangelists, you'll never, realize the truth because there's too much baggage. But that's our own.
I don't know if that's true though, because I just kind of had it. I had it. Just a sort of an answer. What, it's non-personal. That's what it is.
Yes,
it's definitely non-personal, and
in a lot of ways,
it's realization of that.
It's almost anti-personal, and that what the personality wants it to be, it can't be because it's too much there. It's got to kind of come in through the back door,
right? Exactly.
In a way,
that's beautiful. That sounds right to me. To me.
Right here, right now, where we're at. What more? And to quote our buddy, what more can you ask for? What more do you want? Right? You got.
Does he say that? I missed that too.
Yeah, Paul all the time. What more could you? He says, in the end, you.
That's so funny. You hear what you.
These are like huge, like etched in stone Paul Hedermanisms to me. Yeah, it's funny.
I never heard that.
In the end, you're going to travel lighter, and what more do you want?
Travel lighter.
Yeah, you're going to travel lighter, and in the end, what more do you want? What more can you ask for? And I think that all the time, like give up on more. Give up on there is no more than this,
Yeah, it's sort of the brown paper bag of spiritualism.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's cool. There's you create a whole lot of unnecessary crap by wanting it to be more than that.
Yeah.
And sometimes, it is. And when it
is, it is. Yeah, it all boils down to my mother saying, "It is what it is."
Yeah.
Oh, it's so lovely seeing your smiling face. I do miss community.
I do
miss the foot. Yeah, I always appreciated it, because I don't think even with other teachers I've ever experienced this sense of community. Sometimes there's a dryness, but in this message, sometimes you could, and I think having such a warm, heartfelt community where I felt so welcome from the moment I came.
Me too. And the thing I think of too is like, just objectively from the outside, all we really do is just laugh. Like we get together.
I know. Sometimes I even look at myself on the Zoom with Paul. I'm like, I'm the only person laughing. Oh,
I'm laughing too. If you ever look at mine, I'm sitting there cracking up too.
Yeah, you're never on my page.
Okay,
we should all have.
I know. Our little comedies. Because I say all the time, he's like one of my favorite stand-up comedians. I laugh uncontrollably.
Right?
And there's a little tiny sense of like how you're not supposed to laugh in church. There's a little sense of no one else is laughing. But it's so funny.
anything.
Oh yeah.
He's such a. I love being able to be with somebody awake, for want of a better word, on such a casual basis.
Yeah.
I've had teachers where I was always better off not sitting close to them, because when I would sit close to them with hundreds and hundreds of people, I would always just want to sit closer.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I'd be into the whole,
That's totally
thing.
interesting. Yeah.
Right. And then when I was sort of like in nowhere land, nowhere close to the teacher, they were so much closer to me.
That's beautiful insight.
But wow. I still, so it's like a prayer answered, to be honest, as corny as that sounds, to be able 100%. On such a casual basis to experience this.
I agree. Thank you for saying that, because I am so corny and sentimental on this podcast again and again, but I feel the same way, that I couldn't have wrote the script myself. I couldn't have wrote this. You know what I mean? It's perfect in every way, personally, for what it's done. And then kind of the thing that Keith and I have been playing with, talking about, is that Paul, the message is like the minimal effective dose for like traveling lighter, right? That it's like, it's, you know what I mean? Like just enough, and then get on your way. Like,
right, no bells and whistles. I'm not going to give you,
There's no robes. There's no practices. There's no homework. It's like, it's the minimum effective dose. You could take 100 pills, but you just need this one,
Yeah.
And then what is the net benefit? Again, getting back to what more do you want? You travel lighter, and, a little bit more joy, and a lot more in my case, a lot more joy.
Wow, I didn't realize it was such a radical awakening for you.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, it's
that's just the way
words.
It worked in the body. That's a whole nother podcast, how physical it can actually be for some people.
Absolutely. Yeah, I know I could dive into that for sure, but not today. That was fun.
All right. Well, thank you. Are you feeling this is a good point to close?
I feel like we could go forever, but
right.
The actual life circumstances, it's 2:00. I gotta go on with my day. I did like your text the other day, your idea of doing a happy hour. I think that would be very cool.
Right. Yeah. I haven't done anything social on well, this is probably off camera, but I hear it's really fun to do Zoom stuff.
Well, I'm just now, just in my own little mental, narration, I'm like, this damn near feels like I'm sitting here talking with you. Like
I know.
I was surprised.
It's amazing.
I really thought it would feel like a phone call, and it really is like you're damn near right here.
I know. I'm responding. I'm feeling it.
You sitting on the couch. I didn't make you do anything.
You did, actually, at one point. Yeah.
It feels like we're on the couch at Fireside or Firehouse,
I know. Fireside.
Yeah. I always call it that. But yeah, I think it'd be cool after a talk, just to keep it somewhat like real life, right? After the talk on Saturday, get everybody and
that's a really good point. That's exactly what happened with Mike Z and myself. I was, because I'm sort of like crazy when it comes to technical stuff, it took me ages to like disconnect, and then I hear a voice from beyond going, Sharon. And it was Mike Z, and just having a little 5-minute interaction with him after the start song was perfect. So that's a great idea. Why don't we all just stay on?
That's as easy as it gets, right?
Why don't we send a text out?
Yeah. Okay. You, me, Keith, Mike, any other usual. And then what's cool too is if somebody on the other side of the globe wants to join in, they can.
That's true. Yeah. Whoever, let's give that a try. Totally. I love that. Oh God, you have to edit this at this point.
Sure. Yeah, I'll give it the Mike Z edit.
That's also what I love about Paul's life is how people just come in, just the right person, or the song's like, oh cool, a new wow, who are you? And it's just also met on this real deep level. Totally. But it still is casual, I don't know.
Well, that
could be cool.
That is another thing why I didn't have this intention when I started doing this podcast a year ago, but I've met people at Paul's talks afterwards and said, I know this is kind of weird. You don't really know me, but do you want to do a podcast with me? Right. And one of those was Patrick, that we totally connected. And I'm hoping
remind me, I feel terrible. Who's Patrick?
Patrick, younger guy.
Oh, the New York guy.
The New York guy. Yeah, exactly.
Oh yeah, you're twin. You're yeah.
Yeah.
You're hipsters in the back row.
There you go.
I totally see you guys hitting it off.
Yeah. And if I didn't have the podcast, I kind of wouldn't have an excuse to be like, hey, do you want to sit down and talk for 2 hours for no good reason?
Your defenses are down. Yeah. Like you just meet people honestly. Yeah. And I'm so glad. Who's the other guy?
The other one was the couple from I hope I don't get it wrong. Sweden, I think. No,
Nordic.
Dutch. What are the Netherlands? They're from the Netherlands. The guy's from Germany. She's from the Netherlands. They live in the Netherlands now together. Barbara and Roman, which I don't know if you listened to that one, but I'll send it to you again. That was amazing. They have a crazy.
No, I guess I'm behind.
Oh man, I'll send it to you. It's so cool. I mean, I self-promotion.
I could find it.
Yeah, I think it was the 6th episode. They met at an Adyashanti retreat, at a silent retreat. Yeah, it's crazy.
That says it all.
Right? Yeah, exactly. And then she disappeared. He couldn't find her. And so he had to wait an entire year until the next silent retreat to go up and talk to her. Yeah.
You got that on the podcast?
I got that on the podcast. Yeah,
That's podcast gold.
It was. And I think I stood up. I was so shocked when they.
Hey, I just had a thought. I wondered, okay, you have a life, you have 4 million kids, you have a job. But I think you can make a great documentary.
I've always, since way before
really?
this, I've always been drawn to wanting to do documentaries. Yeah. And it's so funny because last week on the phone with Keith, I talked about, I don't think there's any good documentaries out there about radio, talk show, podcast, that transition of that, the history of that, you know what I mean? And
like the whole Mark
Maron,
like he
Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
Because that all started, I remember the year, because I remember starting to download podcasts in 2006 was that, it's created a revolution, obviously. But I look at that as an extension of talk radio, which I look at.
I'm sorry, the wheels are turning, because now I'm thinking, you're right, it was an explosion and it was amazing, and it's changed things in so many ways you could explore.
I think
Zoom is going to be that. I think now
I've been thinking the same thing. Yeah.
It would be very interesting to do that documentary now. Yeah, I'm really excited to see what happens. It's crazy
too, to me, like how I know Zoom was here, but I just never even considered using it. And once you start using it, the whole world is so close. I could do a podcast with Russell Brand in England without having to get on a plane. Like,
you're right.
And I know that was true before, but it just wasn't true for me. I was like, I can't do that. And it seems so like it really creates a global community so much quicker to just. And
it goes beyond the brain, because you would, like you said, you didn't think this would be so personal. Yeah. You would feel like
until you actually go for it.
How we're all like, well, the stores, the economy's going. Even before that, people were still doing more shopping online. And I had this sort of vision, well, yes, we lament that because we think of community in shopping, unfortunately.
I know.
But okay, let's say those stores closed down and parks, those became our parks.
Yeah.
And but wait a minute, this does tie in, Sharon. It ties in because it all just kind of came. But our sort of our meeting centers are the Zooms, the podcasts, and it's just like regrouping, all the time, I guess.
Yes.
But it does feel like this Zoom thing and this quarantine is not. It's going to change our ways of feeling close and connected.
Absolutely. I'm totally down with that. And I feel the get off my lawn old grandpa sense of me of like, no, nothing beats, face to face, but I'm that quickly, realizing that. So again, now we got cut off when I was talking about my edible thoughts the other night. So
right.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I was thinking about
what happened to that?
Well, just because you reminded me of it again, the idea of there's essential work and then everything else is just kind of play, and we're just trading, you could imagine monopoly money at that point, because it's not, it's not essential. It's just, it's art for this or for that or for
it's
fun,
just circulating.
It's just circulating, right? And then I was thinking how this is the best opportunity ever to reassess that, right? And then I was also thinking about how good it's been for the environment that people aren't driving as much, and how like we all could sit in our rooms. We all could sit in our rooms and Zoom to Paul's talks, and people from all around the world can. And, and you think of, there's not a single effect to the environment that there is of all of us getting in our cars and our plane or this and that, you know what I mean? And if exponentially that expands out into the globe, the impact that really could have. And so it hit me like,
and we're seeing that.
We're seeing exactly right.
See that, which would be part of your documentary, of
there
course.
You go. Yeah. Totally throw that in there. But just the idea of like, it was a cost, but we didn't look at it as a cost. It was a given. You drive to the place and you do it in person.
It's a given.
And now you're looking at it as there is a cost. Yeah, however small, but exponentially expanded out through time. That if you choose to stay home, you're not paying that price to the environment. You're
no
so that
footprint.
Well, welcome to my high edible thoughts on a Sunday night, but
I forgot the edible, because it's just a
it makes sense actually.
Who we are anyway.
Exactly. Normally the edible thoughts don't come across that clear. That actually made sense to me sober. Right on.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, it's definitely a time for change.
It is. Yeah, it's huge. It's historic.
I think it's interesting because, like you said, we tend to hold on to these concepts, like, well, that's bad, and I'm thinking about the store thing, like, oh, I don't want store, I want to touch things, and so I've like really been sad to see so many stores close down, and the fact that we may never shop the same. But then when you go, well, wait a minute, those could be parks.
Yeah, exactly. And you can still, the physical world could still, have its benefit. And it's just, we were given this is another stoner Joe Rogan-y kind of thought, is like, we were just given this world. We take so much for granted. He calls it the momentum. We're living on the momentum of dead people and dead ideas.
Yes.
We inherit it and we don't question so much of it. Right.
Yeah. Our conditioning.
Exactly. And so just going like, okay, being in the physical world has a huge benefit, but being in a nature park, I was walking through Golden Gate Park with my family, over the weekend, and it was like, this is freaking beautiful. And there's a lot of people around, and we're all keeping our 6 feet distance, and the birds are chirping, and like, that's exponentially more valuable than going to a strip mall,
Yes.
So
yes.
You can maybe create a world where everyone gets their needs fulfilled, and you have a watered down version of outside physical contact. You have more bang for your buck when people are going outside and connecting with the outside world, and you're getting more efficient and bang for your buck staying at home and not impacting the environment,
I love this.
Yeah.
It's so
I think we got a documentary brewing right now.
Really?
I think so.
I could see it.
Right on. Cool.
All right, my love. I will let you go.
That was so much fun. I'll see you tonight.
Lockdown.
I'll see you tonight laughing on the.
Oh, right. Oh, that's right. We'll be like.
Yeah, I know. We'll be the bad kids in the corner, laughing.
All right. Love you, Nick.
You too. Love you.
Thanks for this. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, you too.
Bye.